Though not mentioned by name in Revelation, the Antichrist has come to be a central figure of the apocalypse. One of its earliest depictions comes from the time of the Crusades, drawn by the German nun Hildegard of Bingen.
Hildegard of Bingen is one of the most interesting figures in the whole history of apocalypticism. Very brilliant, a very talented, multi-talented woman, and a deep believer in Bible prophecy.
Hildegard wrote this music, painted these pictures, and had powerful apocalyptic visions.
One of Hildegard's most dramatic visions is the one where she describes the actual birth of the Antichrist figure. And it is indeed a monstrous birth.
There appeared a monstrous and totally black head with fiery eyes, ears like the ears of a donkey, nostrils and mouth like those of a lion, gnashing with vast open mouth.
That, of course, is the image of the Antichrist, who will be born from the church, who will persecute believing Christians, and who will try to pretend that he is divine by ascending into heaven.
For Hildegard, the source of the Antichrist's evil power lay in Judaism.
The Antichrist orders them to observe both circumcision and Judaism, according to the customs of the Jews.
I don't think we can lose sight of the fact that she uses a great deal of earlier medieval Christian anti-Jewish legend and thinking. For her, it's very clear that the Jews are the enemy of Christ.
Each year, the town of Trier, Germany, celebrates the first day of Pentecost with a procession. On this day in 1096, Crusaders arrived in Trier on their way to Jerusalem.
When the Crusades were getting underway and Christians were going off to Jerusalem to redeem the city of Jerusalem from the heretics, at the same time we see horrible, horrendous anti-Semitic persecutions breaking out in some of the cities of Germany.
Pope Urban had envisioned a crusade of knightly warriors fueled by religious spirit. But what began as a holy mission turned into apocalyptic mob violence.
These hordes felt that as a necessary preliminary to the second coming, it was necessary to kill all Jews. This was not the official church doctrine. The official doctrine was that all Jews must be converted to Christianity before the second coming. But one way of settling this matter was to kill them. Then there would be no unconverted Jews left.
The Crusaders killed thousands of Jews in the towns along the Rhine. Their deaths were marked by the singing of the ancient prayer of grief over the destruction of the temple.
This anti-Jewish sentiment had, of course, been around for several centuries prior to Hildegard. But with the beginning of the Crusades, we get the first mass killing of Jews as a part of a Christian holy war. That, combined with the sense of this apocalyptic adventure, is really going to kick off for us 1,000 years of anti-Semitism.
Through the ages, the dualism of apocalypse, light and dark, good and evil, has fueled hatred and violence. But for some, it has also infused historic events with prophetic meaning. Perhaps the most far-reaching interpretation of the Bible as a blueprint for history stems from the 12th century Italian monk Joachim of Fiore. At the monastery in Casamare, south of Rome, Joachim would change the course of Christian apocalyptic thinking.
Joachim of Fiore is the most important apocalyptic thinker of the whole medieval period. And maybe after the prophet John, the most important apocalyptic thinker in the history of Christianity. He tells us that he was trying to understand and write a commentary on the book of Revelation, and finding it impossible. The book was too difficult. And then one Easter morning he awakened, but he awakened as a new person, having been given a spiritual understanding of the meaning of the book of Revelation and the concords, that is, the relationship of all the books in the Bible.
Joachim began a long tradition of biblical prophecy by expressing his predictions of history in a series of charts. He tied the meaning of history directly to the Holy Trinity.
The first is the age of the Father. He links it to the period of ancient Israel. The second is the age of the Son. It's the period of the Church from the New Testament down to his own time. The third age, the one that's just about to dawn, he calls the age of the Spirit. It's the age when the whole world will be at peace and the whole world will look like and live like a monastery.
Joachim's vision of the third age was peaceful. It was a spiritual age. It would be a purification of the world through the existence and the influence of a monastic order which would be totally spiritual, totally pure.
And yet, Joachim's vision was a radical departure. He rejected the official church view that Christ's return lay somewhere off in the distant future. In the midst of the Crusades, he predicted that Armageddon was near.
Joachim put himself effectively in opposition to the Catholic hierarchy. He triggered a sense of hope that the age of the Spirit was indeed about to begin, and that the old corrupt order would be overthrown.
Joachim was a real apocalypticist in the original sense of the prophet John, because he believed that current events that he saw around him were signs of the times, signs that had been predicted in the book of the Apocalypse and now were being fulfilled. This is what Augustine and others had ruled out.
Joachim illustrated the beast of Revelation with its 7 heads representing kings who have oppressed Christianity. The first head is Herod the Great. The 6th head is Saladin, the Turkish leader who had repulsed the Crusaders and now controlled Jerusalem.
He believed that Saladin was the current persecutor and that right around the corner would be the 7th head, who would be the final historical Antichrist.
Joachim also turned to Revelation to tell him how long till the end.
He comes up with a numerical calculation by reading Scripture and figuring out how to put the numbers together. By the time he totals it all up, he comes to the conclusion that from the birth of Christ to the end of time is 1,260 years.
The date he settled on, 1260, lay only 80 years in the future.
It's an immensely complicated numerological fantasy which led him to the year 1260. Also, of course, he would be conveniently dead before that, which indeed he was.
Despite the passing of his predicted date, the centuries following Joachim would see a growing sense that the end of the world was imminent.
When we look at the Middle Ages, one of the things you see very clearly is they saw the end of the world all around them. When a Christian of that day went into a church building, the scene over the doorway was the Last Judgment, with a fearful Christ standing in judgment and the jaws of hell waiting for the sinner.